Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Handful of Daisies DIY. I'm Elaine. If you're new to my channel, I upcycle old items that I find at thrift stores and flea markets, yard sales, and pretty much everywhere. I also create new items for my vendor booth at By the Season in Salem, Virginia, and on my website at ahandfulofdaisies.com. If that's something you're interested in, I would love for you to join our DIY family by hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. If you're already subscribed, thanks so much for supporting my channel. I hope you're finding inspiration in the projects that we've done so far, and maybe you're trying some on your own as well. So this week I have some special orders that I'm going to be working on, so I thought I'd take you along with me. I'm going to be working in between my craft room and my workshop to create these items. So if you're ready, let's get started. So I'm starting off in the workshop. I'm going to prepare all of my pieces for my signs. I have pre-measured all of my wood pieces to get them ready to cut. The first piece is the spindle I'm going to be using to hang two of my signs. This piece is going to be the back side that the spindle is going to attach to. I'm just putting all my extra pieces over to the side, not to get them mixed up with the pieces that I need. These smaller pieces are going to be the framing for the wood sign. I have pre-cut 12 by 12 boards that I'm going to use for the signs. You'll see those when I go to paint. I am making two hanging signs, so I have enough wood to frame each sign. Just going to sand down the edges. This all does tend to leave just a little bit of splintering. So now we're ready to get started on painting. The first 12 by 12 board, I'm using the Waverly antiquing wax and water mixture. My thought was I was going to stain the front and then paint over it white and then sand it back so you could see a little of that. But you'll see that I ended up painting it white and not sanding it back, distressing it. I just left it white. One of the sign frames is going to be stained, so I'm not going to be painting these white. Now I'm going to move on to all the black pieces. The spindle and the back side that the spindle attaches to are both going to be black. The black that I'm using is the Waverly Chalk Paint and Ink. It has really good coverage. I like this paint really well because it's really pigmented and it gives you really good coverage. You only need one coat. Now I'm going to move on to the white. This sign was just an old sign that I'm using and I'm repurposing. So I'm just painting over what was already there, and it's going to take 2 coats. I'm using the Resale chalk and linen. Now the second sign is going to be just white, and like I said, the other sign that I stained, I'm going to go back and paint over that white as well. I did put 2 coats of the Resale chalk paint on both of these pieces. The white paint usually takes 2 coats. So now we're ready to stencil the sign. Before I do that, I'm going to use my sanding block and just smooth out the top, just to smooth out all those brush strokes. And then I wiped all of the sanding dust back. Now I used my silhouette to create this stencil. When I'm creating stencils for myself, I typically just use contact paper that I pick up at either Dollar Tree or Dollar General. I'm just using my scraping tool to make sure it's down on the wood really well before I pull back the transfer tape. Now when I'm creating stencils to sell, I do use the regular stencil material. So if you're looking for a stencil, I do custom stencils. You can check that out on my website at ahandfulofdaisies.com. So I'm going to use Waverly Chalk and White just for a first coat, just to keep the stencil from bleeding. You don't have to do this. I usually do. Just to make sure it doesn't bleed. After that's dried, I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint and ink and cover the stencil. So I'm dipping my brush in the paint and then just offloading it on a paper towel, just so it's not thick. If it's not dark enough, you can always go back and go over it again with the second coat, but you should always do just a really light coat at first, just to make sure you don't get that bleed through. I'm going to go ahead and pull the stencil back while it's still wet. Since I use such a light layer of the paint, it dries really quickly. I'm using my little pick tool just to pull out the little pieces. So it came out really clean, no bleeding. So now we're going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull the backing off and then measure just to make sure I have it centered. Then I'm going to use my scraping tool just to make sure it's adhered to the wood really well. So first I'm going to tape up the edges, since my stencil didn't go all the way to the edge. I'm just measuring to make sure that my tape is on even as well. So on this one, I'm not going to start out with the white paint. I'm going to go ahead and just use a light brush stroke. I'm just going to offload the paint off of my brush really well so it's really dry, just to make sure I don't get that bleed through, and we'll see how it comes out in the end. I'm going to go ahead and pull off the tape and the stencil. And I ended up getting really clean lines. So again, you just have to be really careful and make sure you're offloading your brush onto that paper towel, so you're not putting a lot of heavy paint on there, and you'll get these clean lines. Then we're back to the workshop. I'm going to use my nail gun to put the framing around the signs. Just making sure I have the best side out, facing out. I'm going to do the same thing to the white sign as well. And here's a look at how they turned out. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these signs. I think they turned out pretty well. This is the first time I've made these hanging signs. The third sign that I made, I didn't get a video, but I used black permanent vinyl on this sign, cutting it with my silhouette machine. So thanks so much for watching today. Don't forget, if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to join our DIY family by hitting that subscribe button. You'll also find me on Facebook and Instagram at A Handful of Daisy's Home Decor. And I'll see you next week for another DIY.